JT Crowley is Talking Books. On the show, you'll hear from emerging talent and seasoned veterans from around the world.
Hello, I'm JT Crowley. I'm the host of Talking Book Show on Web Talk Radio. And today I have the wonderful opportunity to talk to Rusty Reece from California in the United States of America. And he's here to talk about his first book in a very, very exciting, which I believe is going to be a trilogy. And it's an exciting series, everybody. And this book is aptly titled The Warrior and the Dragon. And as we go through the interview, you will start to get a hint as to why the title. The book is filled with magic. It's got shapeshifters. We've got combat. We've got magical battles. We've got compelling characters. You know, these characters, some of them are two-skinned, and you might be thinking, what's two-skinned? Well, that'll all come to light as we carry on with the interview. The story is very fast-paced and it's very compelling, and it revolves around the main protagonist, Jason, whose dual existence is that of a warrior and a dragon. So there's the hint to the title of the book, The Warrior and the Dragon. It's a busy book. It's a big book. There's lots going on. And for those of you who love sci-fi and fantasy fiction, that blend of a genre, this is your book. It's extremely well written and it's extremely interesting. Now, if you want to know a little bit more about the book or about Rusty, then you can go onto his webpage and his social media sites. You'll find them on the written introduction that accompanies this podcast interview. It is well worth go and have a visit to the website and his social media sites, because you'll get to know a little bit more about Rusty and more about the book and where you can get the book, because you can get the book from that site as well. You can get the book from the publishers, you can get it from Amazon, you can get it from a lot of places, but have a look at his webpage because it's absolutely fascinating. Rusty, come and join me.
Hey, John, thank you for having me. I appreciate the time you're spending to interview me for this book.
Very welcome. And just for those of you, it's morning in California for Rusty and it's evening for me in the United Kingdom. So he's doing this interview in daylight, I'm doing it in darkness. There you go. Now, Rusty, before we delve into the book, would you care to tell the audience, give the audience a little bit of information about yourself and what's the backdrop, the story behind the story to this book? And as I said, I think this is going to be a trilogy. So who are you and what's the story behind the story to this book?
Okay, let's see. First, who am I? I'm a retired engineer. I worked for 35 years in engineering. I taught math for 15. And then when I fully retired, I started writing. Now, that's actually not the start of my writing. When I was in junior high school and high school, I would write short stories. And often that was because of an assignment from an English teacher. But I would write them. I had a couple of them published in student magazines. So that was pretty good. And then I kind of stopped writing for a while when I was in college. And then after I graduated, I would occasionally start. I would get a scene written or two written, and then I'd lose the thread or lose the inspiration to get much further.
Writer's block.
Yes, kind of like a writer's block, except I didn't consider it that because I hadn't really gotten anyway. So I've gotten in writer's block since then. But let's see, where was that? Oh, yeah. Recently, I was actually in kind of a vivid dreaming state, and I was thinking about the Doors song "Riders on the Storm." And for some reason, the word shifted to "Daughter of the Storm." And I had kind of a vision of a wolf walking into a cave. And the wolf was the daughter of the storm. And that's the title of the first chapter, because the wolf is the daughter of the storm. And then I thought of her meeting a person in the cave in her wolf skin. And this is when I first had the concept of two skin, that the wolf could change into a lady. And that was just the beginnings of it. And I thought at that time that this is not like a weir. She's a perfectly normal wolf when she's a wolf, a perfectly normal person when she's a person. But when she's a wolf who has a person's kind of mind sitting behind her. And when she's the person, and the wolf can see through her eyes and can influence her actions and decisions. So here's the two skin. There's this dichotomy always between you and your animal skin as you're working on that. So then I kind of asked myself the question of how did Jason get there and where was he going? And that kind of started the story, as I had to go back of how did he get to the cave? Where was he going? And then what would happen after that? So I literally followed Jason, my character. Once I had defined the character well enough, he led the story.
And he
Uh,
does. He does.
and
Mm. These characters, they can flip between their two, a lot of them can flip between their two-skinned characters. And whilst they're in the other character, the other skin, can see them, can influence them.
yes, yes, they see through their eyes and they
Mm.
smell through their nose, and with some limited ability, they can touch through the hands and feet of their animal skin. And they can, in a couple of occasions, the dragon will have a burst of energy or a burst of emotion, and Jason's arm will move a little bit because the dragon has tried to do something and Jason wasn't expecting it. So he doesn't resist. So it's kind of a very complicated feeling between the two of them.
Mm. And you'll find that when Jason is in the transition into Xavier the Dragon, he's staggered as to the eyesight of the dragon. And we'll leave it there for the time being.
Okay.
Now, Rusty, let's open the book. There are 16 chapters to this book, everybody. There are over 300 pages. It's a chunky book. We're not going to go into all the 16 chapters because that's not the idea of the podcast. The idea is to give you an insight as to what you can expect. So prior to coming on, Rusty and I have agreed on certain chapters which we feel will give you enough of an insight as to want to go and explore more about the book. And that's what the whole idea is behind this interview. So let's go to chapter 1. And you headed this up, Daughter of the Storm. And you introduced us to Erlenda. You introduced us to Somnath. You expose a few more of the characters, Golga Draft, and of course Jason, the main character. And you set the opening scene at Twin Rivers Bay. There's a conversation between Jason and grandmother, an attack on his person, an introduction of a kind to Duke Rushard, a letter to the Chief of Defenders, plus a whole host of other topics, and, of course, the character, a wolf. Would you care to give us a brief insight as to the contents of these opening chapters? So why have you picked these characters? Why have you given them these characteristics? Why have you set the scene here? And why the opening gambit? You've introduced all these brilliant characters here. What's it about?
Okay, let's see. We're following the beginning of Jason's story, as far as I am concerned, is he has arrived at Twin River City. And he's there. He's been in the army for over 10 years. And he's been released from the army and he's searching for a place to land. And so he ends up at Twin River City. At Twin River City, he meets this older mage who gets his attention and he doesn't know who she is. And so he introduces himself to her by calling her grandmother. She said, okay, why are you calling me grandmother? You don't know me. And he said, it's a term of respect for an older woman where I come from. And she said, okay, cool. I can live with that. She then induces him to lead her to the river. And in the process of doing so, she casts an illusion on herself. So he is leading a pig through town. This leads to an altercation with some sheriffs who see what they think is a bumpkin leading a pig. And they are somewhat drunk and they accost him. And while he is defending his pig, the Duke shows up. So he meets the Duke. Now, the Duke doesn't really come in again until book two. But you introduced to the Duke. Um, Grandmother convinces Jason he should not seek employment with the Duke, but go to Twin River City and take an artifact that she owns there. Further, she says, I detect in you more magic than you show. I mean, I can tell that you can start fires because you lit my pipe. You can do more. And I think you can learn how to do that when you get to Smoky Springs Valley. Then Jason travels. On his way to Smoky Springs, a storm causes him to seek shelter. So he goes into the cave, and this is the cave that I had the vivid dream about. And during the lull in the storm, the wolf enters. You know, the wolf remains in wolf form. So there's just an interaction there between a man and a wolf. And then that night, they are attacked by a mythical character, so black slime. Well, the two of them defeat the black slime. And the next morning, Aquila the wolf reveals herself as a human as well and tells Jason, my wolf smells on you another two-skinned, but we do not know what kind. You don't smell like any of the others we've met. If you're curious, I'll help you. So she guides him through the process of transforming and surprises both of them when he comes out as a dragon. When Jason recovers from the shock of being transformed, the dragon is in flight. And so he's looking through the dragon's eyes and feeling the air on his wings. And he says, how wings? I don't have wings. What is this? So he started to get kind of the conflict of living through the dragon, while the dragon has had to live through him for some time. And let's see, then there's some more discussion between Aquila and Jason. And then Jason leaves to go to Smoky Springs. And when he arrives there, he delivers the artifact to the Chief Defender Clowers. And Chief Defender Clowers asks him some questions. And in the process of asking those questions, he triggers a death spell on himself. Now, the dragon is immune to human magic, so he's able to stop it, but he can't stop it quick enough, and so that Jason is damaged. And he spends some time in the Defender's infirmary recovering, and then he meets the healer, Heather Moonstar. And this is the woman who will help him reach his inner magic. And there we have chapter one.
And she plays quite a significant role down the book. Now, in the first chapter, you do mention, Erlenda, you do mention Somnath, and you do mention Golgodrath. Who are they?
Golgodrath is the kind of the chief bad guy in the book. In one respect, he's kind of like Sauron in the Lord of the Rings, in the sense of you don't see him, he's mentioned, but not much else in the first book, and that's true of Sauron during the first parts of the book. Now, Sauron is much worse, I think, but Golgodrath is pretty bad. Erlander is one of her chief lieutenants. Now, he is a necromancer. What a necromancer can do is pull life energy from someone else for their own use, and they can pull it to the extent they kill. So that's kind of where they get their terminology. Their name is they kill with their magic. They're kind of pariahs in the community all throughout the magical community and the non-magical community.
He's a sorcerer.
He's a sorcerer, yes.
Sorcerer, yeah. And Somnath?
Somnath was a companion of Jason's during the war. He
Mm.
was a healer, and Jason would visit him in the healing tents when he could, and he would bring a glowing artifact he owned that he'd been given when he left home, and it glows. It's a an icon, a carving in the form of the triple goddess, the maid, the mother, and the crone, and it glows. Now that's all he knows about it, is he owns a glowing icon.
Mm.
When he takes it to the healer's tent, people recover from surgeries better. They recover from other injuries that are being treated better. And so there's kind of a hint that this artifact, which is called a kalasha, he learns that name later, um, has some power, some magical characteristics that Jason was unaware of when he was given it.
Mm. It does, everyone. It does. And you'll start to see as the book unfolds how these characters um, blend together. They are there deliberately to create this phenomenal story. So, Rusty, I want to go to chapter two now, so that the
Okay.
audience, we're moving on a little bit into the book. And this title is Two Are Better Than One. And of course, we very often we do say that. Two minds is better than one, or
Mhm.
two people are better than one. So this book, this chapter is titled Two Are Better Than One. And this area of the book focuses on Jason and Aquila, the wolf in a cave. Two skins. What's the significance of this chapter to the overriding story at such an early stage in the book? Two skins. You've already touched on that. It's fascinating how these skins work. Now, I'm sure the readers are going to find this part of the book intriguing. So, why the storyline? Why the contents to this chapter? And how significant is it to the overriding story, which is about to be revealed over the next 14 chapters?
Okay, well, she's in chapter two. Um, this is the chapter in which Aquila reveals that she is two-skinned to Jason and tells him that she thinks he is one also, and then guides him through the transformation. And so this is the initial introduction that two skins are something different. Up until now, all we've seen is the wolf in her wolf form. And her name is Yiska. That's the wolf. Um, so it's the introduction of having two skins in one body and two personalities in one being, and kind of a little bit of the conflicts that go between them. And one of the initial sorry, not really the initial conflict. This is the introduction of when the dragon first manifests. The dragon has not used his own eyes before, and so he is seeing the world through dragon vision for the first time. And so you see some details, like he can see in infrared, so he can see the heat of bodies that might be prey when they're trying to hide. And so he's viewing the forest, and he's seeing little spots that are brighter, and they're creatures that are too small to be prey, but he can see them. And he introduces himself to Aquila and then says, I'm hungry. And he takes off flying. And then Jason awakens during the flight. So this is the first introduction of the dragon to the man. And so they're having an internal conversation of what's going on here. Where am I? What's happened? And the dragon tries to explain to the best he can, because the dragon doesn't know much either. He only knows that he has been the passenger in Jason for some time. Usually, two skins manifest by the age of 5, and Jason is late 20s, 28, 29. So this is the first time he's turned. Aquila explains to him quite a bit about how two skins functioned and says, if you're willing to try this, I will help you. I'll help you go through the transition. And so he does. The dragon frightens her at first.
Mm.
Let me see. I'm trying to remember exactly when chapter 2 ends. um,
So it's a chapter that is really you are introducing the transition here, and because these transitions are important to everybody, because when you see the ensuing battles coming down the line, they do flip between the two skins, and each skin has its own powers. And this is why, it's so important. And this is what Rusty is setting up here in this second chapter. It's the two-skinned characters because they're going to be using both formats, both transformations to, do what they have to do to face the battles and all the evils and all the struggles that are coming down the line. I think that's a fair enough assessment, don't you?
Yes, I do. I agree. Thank you.
Um, Jason, let's hop now to chapter 4. Jason meets the healer. That's the title you gave it. And it's an introduction to magic and healing, which forms a lot of in this book, magic and healing. And we've got the master healer, Kiminella. I hope I've got that pronunciation right. It's a shorter chapter than most of your chapters. And here I find you talking about major groups of practitioners, physicians, herbalists, midwives, and surgeons. We've got majors and devices, who become form very, very important people in this book. You've got life and spirit manner you talk about here, healing, and we've got the character Gallard appears. We've got a spa coming on the scene here. We've got an infirmary. So, would you care to tell the audience what's this storyline about in this chapter?
Much of what is happening in this story is introducing the community of Smoky Springs. Even though Jason will not be living inside the city during his stay in the valley, the community of Smoky Springs is going to be kind of the heart of the valley. So it's where the defenders are headquartered, and the defenders defend the valley. They're kind of a quasi-military group. It includes men, dwarves, and two-skinned in various forms. Their leader, Clifton Clowers, is a two-skinned bear. Now we meet Galad, and Galad is a two-skinned badger. And and I mentioned earlier that a death curse gets triggered, and after he is recovered from the death curse enough, Chief Defender Clowers says, "Well, you got injured on our watch. We can't have that. You need to go to our infirmary and recover. And that's where we will send the healer to you. We know you came here to meet her, and you've assured us you're not here to harm her. She is our chief healer, after all." Okay, so Galad and Tovia, who's another two-skin, her other skin is a hawk, and she shows up in the story several times, take Jason to the infirmary. Now, the infirmary is in an abandoned high-end spa, and it's abandoned because the minerals shifted with hot springs as things as earthquakes occur and other things, groundwater changes. And so the mineral springs that had been the heart of this spa are no longer mineral springs, they're just hot water. And so the people coming there to improve their health had to follow the spring water. So the building was being abandoned, and Chief Defender Clowers said he asked for it for his headquarters, and it became his headquarters. And he has an infirmary there. So Jason spends time in the infirmary, and he meets one of the other character types in the book, a Kahana. And a Kahana is very much like a human being, except evolutionary, their closest relative is an orangutan, not a chimpanzee. They still have fur over most of their bodies. It's short. They're not as tall as people, but other than that, they're very much people. They're intelligent. They have 5 fingers, and they can work with that. So I've introduced kind of these people who will become important. The Kaihana are very much part of Jason's life in in the Smoky Springs Valley. He interacts with them regularly. Galad, we'll see later, he ends up having a demonstration bout against Galad, and he and Galad become friends over that, as opposed to merely acquaintances.
Do you know the one thing that strikes
Mhm.
me, Rusty, is
Mhm.
that it's almost like in some other books I've read, people have powerful totems. And when I look at your book, the humans transition into powerful other beings, powerful animals, a bear, that's powerful, dragon, powerful, a wolf, powerful, hawk, powerful. So I noticed that you give powerful, um, you know, characteristics to your humans. Was that deliberate?
Yes, it was. For one, Jason can't be the only two-skinned in the area,
No.
so he has to have other people who share um, his heritage, I guess.
Hmm.
And let's see. And while there are certainly going to be two-skinned who are kind of okay, you have two skins, so what? Um, these are more the leaders of the community that we're seeing, and so the leaders of the community with two-skinned, they've got a powerful personality to begin with, and so their animal form is also a powerful animal,
Hmm.
kind of go hand in hand.
To match.
Yeah.
Hmm. I thought so. I thought so. And as you read the story, everybody, you really see how these animals forms play a pretty dominant force in overcoming lots of issues. And I'm going to give nothing else away. Read the book if you want to know what the ending is and what they actually do. Now, for me, Rusty, when I first looked at the book, the title of chapter 6 really stuck out for me. And it's called The Dragon and the Wolf Pack. So it caught my eye. So I thought, well, let's take a peek into this part of the book. This is Jason as Xavier, the dragon, interacting with Aquila and two wolf companions. Of course, wolves go in packs. And of course, they all have two skins. The ability to morph one from animal to human and vice versa. Not forgetting when they are in one format, they can feed from the other format, the other transitional character. It's a fascinating chapter. So, Rusty, what's the backdrop? What's the backdrop to the plot here? And again, how significant is it to the overriding story of your book?
Okay. Let's see. The significance in the overriding part of the story is going to be that the pack, and I've used something that's common in other fantasy stories of a pack link, where the members of the pack have an emotional bond that they can tell things that are going on with the other members of the pack. And I felt that Jason, as being a brand new two skin, would need some assistance. And this was a way of giving him some assistance. He would become closely acquainted with the wolf pack. Now, in this case, he feels that Aquila is looking for him or wanting him to arrive. So he's getting some kind of a sense. So a little bit, he's kind of already hooked with Aquila with a tenuous pre-pack link almost. So he goes searching for her in his dragon skin, and dragons find what they seek. So he finds Aquila in the woods with two other wolves, and so he gets their attention and lands. And then the three wolves show up in front of him and they change into their human skins and he changes into his human skin and they tell him the problem they've got. And the problem they've got is they have an abusive pack lead. And he has forced one of them into an intimate relationship that she didn't really desire. And this triggers Jason into a fit of rage. He says that man should not be. And he ends up invoking a very powerful magic, which is name magic, and he renames the pack lead and strips from him his two-skin ability. This is very potent magic that Jason is unaware of that he has. And that frees the other two from the pack link with this abusive leader. Now they need a pack so they don't go insane. And they ask Jason to join them because they need four to form a pack and has to have at least one male. So he does. He forms the pack with them. And the dragon is really not happy about this. He doesn't like the idea of sharing his existence with wolves, even if it's only a mental link. He doesn't like being close to them as part of the pack link ritual requires. And he's doing so only because Aquila needs the pack. So we have a kind of the first real conflict between Jason and the dragon, where the dragon just doesn't want to do this. And Jason convinces him to go through with it anyway.
Yes, because sometimes the split personalities, they differ. They don't
Yeah.
necessarily agree with each other.
Yeah.
And that's what's happened here. And that's why I wanted to ask that question, because I wanted to show that the two-skinned characters, the personalities of each one of them sometimes clash, but more often they agree. But it's how they deal with both sides of the argument, both sides of the personalities, and how it enhances the storyline. Because yes, the pack, of course, they're wolves. Packs, wolves go in packs. That is their tradition. That is how they operate. The leader of the pack, and the dominant male, the dominant female. That's how they operate. And this is how Aquila is operating when she goes into her wolf mode. So, there are many, many twists and turns to this book, everybody. And just as you think you might have an inclination as to how it's going, well, Rusty throws another wobble to throw you off the scent. And I'm not going to tell you where they are. Now, Rusty. I want to, because just there are 16 chapters, and this is all about just teasing you, the audience. I want to go to chapter 8, and the title is The Girl with the Golden Voice. Now, I'm not going to give a brief introduction as to what the reader can expect from the contents of this chapter. I'm going to let you do this. So what's this chapter about?
This chapter is about a couple of things. One of them is a little bit of an exploration into the religious practices for those who worship the Morai, the goddess in the three forms, the maid, mother, and crone. And the community that Jason ends up joining in Smoky Springs Valley is in a farmstead, Terlingua. And one of the residents of Terlingua is a young lady named Melody. Now, she has a deformed foot, and so she has to walk on crutches, and she tends to be isolated. Well, she also has a very amazing singing voice, and she's very devoted to the goddess. So Heather invites Jason to come to their full moon ceremony in which Melody is going to be leading the chant. And so Jason agrees, of course, because he's part of the community. He wants to remain part of the community and get more involved. And so he shows up and he's sitting, and when Melody shows up, Heather, who it turns out to be a priestess of the Morai, even though she keeps that hidden in the valley, opens the ceremony with a prayer, and then they start with a few simple instruments on a chant, and Melody starts leading the chant. Jason starts going into a devotional state, and he sees, because now his wizard sight kicks in a little bit, he sees kind of a pulsing light that comes in tune with the chant. And that pulsing light gets stronger as the chant goes on. And when it hits him, he goes into a really deep devotional state. Scares the hell out of the dragon, because suddenly the dragon feels isolated again. And so there were a couple of things I was wanting to get from here, and one of them was these hints into the religious aspect and the once again the dichotomy between the man and the dragon of this religious experience and the dragon being kind of not really present for that. And the other one was the potency of having a group chanting together as opposed to an individual, because Jason has been having devotions to the goddess his entire life, every day, but he's always alone. So he's not ever seen how that this combined emotional state is stronger. And so this pulsing light that he's seeing is what's doing that. Now, later, and this is not in book one, I intend to use this cooperating magic as a means of defense during a war, of getting a group of people to chant and gain the protection of the goddess for a time.
Okay.
So,
I think that gives us a brief insight as to what's
okay.
cracking off in this part of the storyline. Now, chapter 9, Jason Prepares. And when you look at that title, you can't help but ask yourself, what is he preparing for? Um, we've got Aquila and a small group of two-skinned wolves arrive at the gates of Terlinga, and you've already mentioned that. She's seeking asylum and she's searching for Jason. Jason transforms from his human skin to Xavier the dragon in front of Heather, who has asked to watch the transformation, the transition. She's fascinated how the process takes place. Xavier tells Jason he needs to molt again. Interesting to say, I need to molt, I need to transition. Um, and Jason is, and that happens. And then we find Jason is instructing students. And we have Xavier hunting and consuming a deer, then changing into his human skin for a meeting with the other humans, plus a whole lot more. Rusty, where's the storyline going here? Where's the turning point here? Where are you twisting the storyline here?
Okay, twisting the storyline here. Terlingua is kind of an isolated community, and it is almost entirely women. I mean, human women and Kahana women. And Jason is the only resident male. I mean, men come in to work on it, but he's the only resident male. And he is concerned about the security of it being so close to the wilderness as it is, and that there were known groups of marauders floating around. And so he wants to prepare Terlingua to react. So he's preparing for coming violence. He doesn't really know it's coming, but he feels like it is. He's a warrior. So he's concerned about safety of the poor he's living. Now, in terms of the molting, that was just an interaction of Jason has to deal with the dragon's life as well. And dragons, like all reptiles, when they grow, they molt. So he has to molt. He has to find a place to molt. Um, Jason helps him find a place to molt through the people at Terlingua, and then the molting occurs. There are a few other things that occur at his molting site, which I don't think are terribly important to the long story. They are more some of the detailed workings inside the between the Kaihana and the humans, and healing herbs that grow near where the cave that the Xavier is using is, but that are hard to get to and dangerous to get to. And so Xavier helps with that. In terms of the hunting the deer and bringing part of the deer back, that was part of the agreement that Jason made when he arrived at Terlingua, is I will work on the farm as payment for my medical treatments. And in addition, I will help provide meat because I hunt. Okay, well, it turns out the hunting is almost all done by the dragon. And the dragon is not yet large enough to consume a whole deer. So he will hunt, and the uneaten parts Jason takes back to the farm, where he donates it to the food supply of the farm, giving them animal protein in their diet. So, So it's kind of a mix of details of life on the farm and um, trying to get and see. And as I've lost my train of thought here, just a minute. And Heather is aiding Jason in his in trying to reach his magical core, and she is determined that the trouble that he's having is to reach his magical core. He's got to get past the point where he transitions to the dragon. So he's trying to resist the change. And as he resists the change, I mean, he can't totally resist it. So he resists while Heather's watching, and then traces of fire start showing on his body as he just before he transforms into the dragon, while Heather watches as he gets closer and closer to his magical center.
Fascinating, isn't it, everybody? Now, chapter 11. This is a big chapter, everybody. The dragon revealed. And as I said, this is a chunky chapter, and there's an awful lot going on here. And you talk about, and you start off towards the beginning, but things come to light here. You talk about beware of wolves in sheep clothing. Well, of course, we all know that phrase. Draining the innocent to fuel their dark magic. There are battles that are about to ensue. And Jason is astonished at the visual powers Xavier possesses. I said this earlier on. He's astonished as to the eyesight that Xavier has when he's in that transition form of the dragon. And we have defenders, or horses. We've got Clifton Clowes, chief of the defenders, of Smoky Springs Valley. We've got leg setting, and the list goes on and on and on. And it's fast paced, and and for this part of the book, and it would only be right for me just to say to Rusty, tell us what's going on here, because there is so much in here. So spill the beans to this big chapter.
Okay. Let's see. One of the things that I haven't, neither of us has mentioned is when Jason arrives at Terlingua, he learns that there is a Fae who lives, not really lives, but there's a portal to the Fae realm on the farm grounds, and the Fae actually is there to guard the portal so humans don't go through it inadvertently. But he also serves as the alarm system for the farm, so that if somebody comes into the farm who is not expected, he will raise an alarm. And this alarm also occurs at Defender headquarters. So Jason is working. He's chopping wood, and the alarm goes off, and Jason hears screams. And so he starts running toward first he strips, because you can't change you can change in your clothing, but you rip them all apart if you're bigger than your human being.
Mm-hmm.
And then starts running and jumps into the air and changes into the dragon. Dragon flies to the site of the screams. And the dragon is now completely in charge. And the dragon, knowing where he's going and he's knowing there's battle coming, prepares. So he flies up. So he's coming down to attack. And he spits some of his venom in front, which creates a little fire. And then he issues his challenge. And his challenge, of course, is heard by the men on the ground, who look up and they see fire in the sky and the dragon flying through it. Okay, now they all quit trying to abduct the women and run. Okay, so the dragon has interrupted the kidnapping, and he pursues. He kills 3 of them right away, and one of the Kaihana who was present says there were 6. So he's like, there's one, I don't know where it is. I need to go find that one so he doesn't get away. So Xavier pursues. He gets in the air. And this is where some of the differences are. The dragon is searching the forest. And the dragon can independently zoom his eyes in and out. And he's doing that to hunt for the missing man. Jason finds that nauseating and has to close his mental eyes to not watch. Okay. The alarm at Defender headquarters has triggered a response that they practice. So they have a tarp full of weapons, And the two-skinned eagles, or at least a few of them, pick up the tarp and fly toward Terlingua. Another wave of avian defenders follows them. So the first wave lands, they open the tarp. The second wave lands, they pull armor out and weapons out and arm themselves. So they are ready for conflict, whether there is any remaining or not. And then they're waiting. Okay. Now, Defender Clowers in his human skin and other human defenders are coming on horseback. They're not there quite yet. So the defenders are now prepared to do what they do. And Clowers shows up. And by this time, they've found the remaining defender who had been killed by the Kaihana inside the farm, and just the dragon didn't know that. They see the dragon returning. The dragon sees them. Jason, through the dragon's eyes, sees them. And Jason says, "Be careful. You're approaching armed men. And this could be careful. This is a touchy situation." So Xavier lands and settles himself and looks at the defenders, and then, rather than being anything docile, broadcasts mind to mind, which is the way dragons speak, and says, "I am Xavier Cahoran of the House of Fire. You have my prisoner. Return him to me." And so here is arrogant, assertive. You are mere humans. Give me mine. And so there's a conflict.
Mm. I liked the bit in the chapter there where the dragon's tail sweeps down and basically almost breaks the leg of one of the kidnappers. And because this is where the leg setting comes in, because this is where Heather comes in, and they start to help this man, don't they? That's where I said leg settings.
Yes, they do. What happens is that the healer arrives, and the conflict gets resolved, at least to the point of they're not fighting each other. Um, Heather mentions that she needs to get this man with a broken leg where she can treat him, but moving him is going to be difficult. Jason had helped in the healer's tent during the war, so he's somewhat familiar with setting broken bones and things. And he asks the dragon if the dragon can help. And he says, "First, look at your hand. Yes, you can. You can grasp his leg." So the dragon goes over and offers to help Heather. And so the dragon grasps the two parts of the leg and aligns them so Heather can apply her healing. And while Heather is applying her healing, she detects life mana flowing from the dragon into the man's leg. And this is how Heather heals, is by pushing magic, life mana, into a wound so that it will heal faster. There are some mechanical parts of healing as well, like setting the bone. But then there are the magical parts. To accelerate the healing, you use life mana or spirit mana or both. And Heather has both of those at her fingertips. And so the dragon can broadcast life mana, which he did not know. He was not doing it consciously. So
That's right. And that's
So
why I wanted to bring that in. And also that, I mean, nowadays, you'd have morphine. They had Angel Kiss, didn't they?
Angel's Kiss.
Angel's Kiss. Mm.
Angels. That was one of when I first put that into the book, The Angel's Kiss, I was actually thinking of the song of Nancy Sinatra, "A Strawberry Wine," which is strawberries, cherries, and an angel's kiss and wine. And
Well,
so,
well,
and so the angel's kiss first gets introduced as an additive to a wine in the right after Jason is subjected to the death curse, and they're drinking this wine to try to consolidate. We are now friends, and it has cherry honey, strawberries, and the hint of angel's kiss. Angel's kiss also is a sedative, a very strong sedative. The flowers and the leaves are sedative. The root is poison.
Indeed.
Yeah, so
I think anybody's going to have an operation in those days, you would certainly need some Angel
you
Kiss.
need to make them unconscious, or at least, yeah, relaxed.
Absolutely. So let's go to the last chapter I want to explore here, Rusty, which is chapter 12, which you titled "It Was Dark and Stormy Night." And of course, this comes on the back of this big action-packed chapter 11 that we have just talked about. So, will the story in this next chapter, this chapter 12, be more sedate or just as blistering? Well, let's take a look.
Yeah.
We've got an unexpected storm is brewing at the farm. The people of Tolanga must make emergency preparations if the farm and the crops are to survive. The dining room scene, Jason sings to Finola. Akela reappears on the scene. And now, normally the Kayana were good at predicting future events and avoiding disasters, but they didn't see this disaster coming. The grandfather tree has fallen in the storm. The little girl Melody, well, and Rusty, this for me is a chapter which has got a different feel to it. And I get the sense you have slowed the story down a little here, giving the reader time to rest, particularly after the big, fast-paced chapter 11. But I also suspect, I think you're gearing up the reader, preparing the reader for the final actions coming down over the remaining chapters. Am I right? Have you slowed the pace down here a little bit? And is there a faster pace to come?
Yes, this does slow the pace down a little bit. It's mostly the community coming together uh, in response to this coming storm. And then during the storm, some of the events like the grandfather tree getting hit by lightning and splitting, and the Kaihana getting really upset by that because he is the tree, I called him he. The tree is important to their lore of the valley, and they've been there longer than humans. So the tree is just an important element of that. It's a very old tree. And so it has been damaged. The Kaihana are upset. And few people, Jason does not really understand why the Kaihana are upset. During the storm, it is true that to elevate the spirits of the community, they're serving wine and snacks and things while the storm is going on. And when Fionola, who is Melody's mother, is serving the wine, and when she gets to Jason, Jason decides that he's going to flirt with her. I mean, so he does. He sings a little song to her. And the rest of the community says, wait a minute, you can't sing just to her. Give us all a song. So he leads them in a song. And so there's some community building going on here. Another part of the community building is the pack. Now, the pack has expanded now. There are almost a dozen wolves in the pack living at Terlingua. Now, these are all mothers and pups, mothers and children. Jason is still the only male in the pack. And a couple of them were solo for too long. And so their sanity is on the edge. And so Aquila wants them to come over to Jason and actually have body contact with him because that's something the wolves need. So he's one of the founders of the pack, and this will help with that, help them get back to sanity by the contact. So much of the story is, you're right, it's slowing it down and it's showing some of the sense of the community and some of the sense of what Jason has come to love about the area. He is becoming very entrenched in the community in his short stay.
When you look at it, it's a hurricane, isn't it?
It would be kind of a hurricane if it were closer to the ocean, yes, but it is a very strong storm that has come in. And you mentioned something earlier. One of the elements of magic in my stories is a thing called time walking. And time walking is actually more a term that the Kaihana use, because when they do their rituals to invoke their magic, their strongest magic is this time walking, where they can observe or at least follow the threads that are possible, the possible futures, and see what might happen, what is likely to happen, and then they can try to change what they are doing to affect what happens to be more favorable to them. So it's one of their survival mechanisms as a race, is this ability to do that. Well, their time walking has gotten clouded, so they can't see as far in the future as they could before. And Jason is the cause of that, it turns out.
Ah,
In the opening of the book, there's a little poem that says, From the west a warrior walks. In his staff a longbow hides, sparks from his fingers fly, and in his shadow chaos rides.
mm.
So even though Jason is unaware of this altogether, he is kind of the pebble that starts the landslide. He is something leading forward. He's a disruptive force, not his choice. He just is. He's going to be the person at the right time to cause things to change.
Mm.
Part of that's going to be his dragon. Dragons haven't been seen in Rotinda for 200 years. So there's some disruption already going on just because he's a dragon. And some disruption just because, I'm sorry, his disruption manifests in he affects the ability of others to do magic.
And so what's coming down the line with the other four chapters? Well, go and take a look. So I hope you've got a fair inkling as to what this book is about. It's fast-paced. It's, as I said right at the very beginning, there's magic, there's shapeshifters, there's combat, there's battles, there's two-skinned split personalities. There's wolves, there's bears, there's strong animal skinned characters which attached to the human ones. Um, and of course, the main character, Jason, and his ability to switch to Xavier the dragon and vice versa. And at the same time, they are communicating with each other. They can feel each other's presence. So it's very, very fascinating. And as I said, that's why the name of the book, because it's about Jason. He's a warrior and he's a dragon. So it's the dragon. So it's the warrior and the dragon, because it's about Jason. So that's the book, everybody. Now, mentioned very briefly that this is going to be a trilogy. So what's coming down the line? When's the next book coming out, Rusty? And what's that going to be about?
Okay, well, the
You
next
might
book,
see a bit more of the Duke in this one.
we see more of the Duke in the next book. The next book is about, see, at the end of book one, Jason and Xavier leave Smoky Springs Valley. And they're leaving because Erlander the necromancer has come looking for Jason and he's found him. So he needs to go away. He's not a strong enough mage yet to face a necromancer who's been a necromancer longer than Jason has been alive. So he's leaving. His Matera, the Fae, has ordered him to leave. Heather has told him she wants him to leave. She doesn't want him to stay and get killed. So he leaves. So book two starts with his return and starts setting up his reintroduction into the life in the area. Now he's physically changed as a result of reaching his magical core. He is a head taller. The act of touching his magical core has burned all the hair off of his body. So at the moment, he's bald and beardless.
Is he
As a
older in age?
no, not older in age. He's just
Okay.
it all burned off in the fire that resulted from his touching his magical core and releasing the pent up magic that had been there for some time. So it suddenly gets released. So he's left, and it's 6 months have passed since he left, and he's returning. Okay, so he's been gone for a while. Returning home is always a challenge. So some of the challenges of returning home are part of that, are part of book two. Book two, at the end of book one, at the end of book one, you hear of something that Xavier has done because there's been destruction in the city of Lirabog, which is the adjacent kingdom. And Xavier is the cause of it. Well, that ends up being, once again, he's the bringer of chaos. Um, his action is precipitating a war. So that war, the preparations for that war are now going to reach the valley, and the Duke is going to come to recruit members for his army, actually demand it, because he is a Duke. And so they owe him from the feudal, I mean, it's a feudal Technology-wise, my world is in about the mid-1800s, so they're beginning to get electricity, and they're beginning to get some things that are modern technology. And technology and magic are linked. Magic is the control of energies of magic, and a lot of physics is trying to control the energies of matter. So they're linked. The best magicians are good physicists. The best physicists are a little bit magic. The best healers are a little bit magic
Mm.
and use them. So there's a definite magic is stronger in this world.
Okay. So
So
when's this book coming out?
at the end of next year,
Okay. And you might, as you've been listening to this interview, everybody, because we've been talking about dragons, and behind Rusty are drawings done by his wife, and they're dragons, aren't they?
yes, they are. And see, well, Paul, they do appear to be drawings because of the scale. Each of those is actually a cross stitch. They're needlework. And those you see started out as the backs of my shirts. My wife would cross stitch those patterns into the shirts. I would wear the shirt until the collars and the cuffs began to fray. Then the back became, she framed it and they became artwork in the house. There are 150 dragons in the house, and my wife made 20 of them, I think.
And now you can see why there's a dragon in the book. There you go. Rusty, who would you like to see reading your books, and where can they get your books from?
Okay. I think my book is aimed at people who enjoy fantasy and science fiction. Age-wise, it's not a book for youth. Late teens, young adults, and then older, I think would appreciate this book. There are some scenes that are just not appropriate for children, but for someone who's in their late teens, they're not horrible. I mean, it's not explicit, but there are just some scenes you might not want younger children to read. It's a fast-paced blend of fantasy and science fiction. You've got magic and shapeshifters and combat and magical battles. It follows Jason, whose only magic is the ability to create a small spark that can start fires. And his life gets turned upside down when he learns from a two-skinned wolf woman that he too has a dual existence. He can transform into a dragon. Having two skins is like a split personality, except each personality knows about the other and can communicate with them, even when the alter ego is hidden. So Jason is both a warrior and a dragon. The book follows his journey as he grapples with this doppelganger, a dragon who is impulsive and powerful and communicates directly with him, and he learns to control his expanding magical abilities.
So where can people get this book from?
Okay, they can get this people Amazon, Apple Books, Barnes and Noble, online, iUniverse website. There are links to it from my website.
There you go, everyone. I simply have now to say to Rusty Reece, thank you very much for coming on my show. It's been a great pleasure reviewing his book and chatting to him, all the way from California in the United States of America. Rusty Reece, thank you very much.